Good evening. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes in Black America. I have a special show today, particularly for all you moms out there and adoptive moms. Just kudos to all of you. And we have two moms in the studio today that we'll speak with, and looking forward to that. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, good evening once again. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes in Black America. And before we get started, let me thank last week's guest, Dr. Michael Zollicoffer, attorney Bob DeShield, educator and activist, Miss Beverly Cooper Wheely. I tell you, I stand stunned at the number of viewers that we continue to see each week. I know on the Leon Thomas YouTube page, we exceeded over 500 viewers on the Mike Haney YouTube channel. We exceeded over 600 between Facebook and LinkedIn. We did another 500 viewers. And so I'm just amazed. As I said, we're not a podcast that will say we get 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. We're not CNN, but what we are is a podcast that continues to bring issues to the forefront of all the communities across America, be it you in Alabama, Detroit, Michigan, Los Angeles, California, New York, Baltimore, Birmingham, Alabama, Miami, Florida. You know, what is it that we share in common? And no doubt today, we all share in common wonderful moms. And so what I'd like to do, first of all, encourage you, if you're watching us on Facebook, please like our page. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to that 600 number just because it's a good challenge to get to. And I think we're sitting somewhere at 585 regular subscribers to our YouTube channel. So please subscribe. And I also encourage you today that if you want to give a well wish to your own mom, put your name up there, put her name up there. Please do so, even if your mom is no longer with us, you know, a rest in peace or happy Heavenly Mother's Day tribute. You know, we'll post all that we see up there. But no doubt today is Mom's Day and we honor them. And I am so fortunate to have mine, actually two moms, you know, which you'll meet later, Mom 1A and Mom 1A, you know, my Aunt Lil and my mommy, you know, still with us. And I know they both are adoptive parents to so many out there. And as I tell those whose moms have gone before us, you know, that my mom and my aunt are there with open arms, that they'll adopt you as their own as well. So before we bring them in, let's talk about a few things happening in our country. Just a bit of the news that happened this week. We all have heard as we begin to gear up for the 2024 elections. Donald Trump in the news. And it's important that we hear this stuff. It's important that we get prepared. I think Beverly Cooper Wheely says it best, you know, that we have to look beyond our communities. And we'll tell you why in a couple of minutes. For what's happening. We have to participate in elections beyond our community, just like getting a U.S. Senator down in Georgia last year. It wasn't just Georgians that got Raphael Warnock elected to the U.S. Senate, where he is currently one of two African-American U.S. senators. One's a Republican, Tim Scott, who is thought of being a presidential candidate, a Republican out of South Carolina, and Raphael in Georgia. And we'll talk about one other on the horizon that we all have to get behind. But it's important that we understand the nature of politics and what is happening throughout our country as a people and get involved. Definitely get involved in what's happening in our local communities. Definitely understand the necessity of voting. And if we haven't seen that over the course of 8 years, I don't know what motivates us to get out there and ensure that those around us and we ourselves ensure that we vote. Well, Donald Trump on Tuesday was found liable in a sexual abuse and defaming of a Jean Carroll in a civil trial up in New York and ordered to pay $5 million. And then we spun into Wednesday. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to watch the CNN town hall that Donald Trump participated in. But, this is why it's important for us to look at and see what's happening and where he is. This is a guy that we cannot afford to allow to be president of this country ever again, and understand those behind us. He reiterated that he felt that the election in 2020 was stolen from him. We know, as many of his Republican comrades know, that it was not stolen. He also reiterated that he did nothing wrong in terms of the January 6th insurrection. And he said publicly that he would pardon all those that have been convicted. We know that over 700 have been convicted. Last week, we spoke of 5 Proud Boys that were convicted and faced decades in federal prison. And Donald Trump says that he has no issue and will probably pardon most of them if he's elected. And if this doesn't motivate us as a people to ensure that someone like he does not get in office again, I don't know what does. It's interesting that over 70% of Americans, voting Americans, say that they don't want to see a Donald Trump or Joe Biden rematch. And that's interesting. Joe Biden more, I think people are concerned with his age. We're going to ask our panel of moms today what they think is age a factor or is it effectiveness. But 70% of Americans don't believe that Donald Trump nor Joe Biden should run, but definitely Donald Trump. And what's the alternative to Donald Trump on the Republican side? Ron DeSantis, the guy that is fighting Mickey Mouse and trying to get Mickey Mouse out of the state of Florida and the anti-vaxxer, no mask mandates, and a plethora of issues in Florida. So does the alternative become a Tim Scott, an African-American U.S. Senator out of South Carolina, or Nikki Haley? What do we look at, in terms of strategically ensuring that we plant or support someone other than a Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis who racist policies continue to divide this America. And speaking of President Biden, he spoke at Howard University commencement exercise yesterday, and more of a tee up for the pending political presidential race coming up. He talked about with the graduating seniors or the collegians at Howard about strengthening the divide and ensuring that they participate in the political process. And not to say that he's wrong, but again, it's important that we as a people realize the significance of our vote and our voices, and we ensure that they get heard. And as you hear from our moms in terms of struggles that they went through to get us to this point, it's important that our kids and our kids' kids understand the efforts of people like Mommy Inez and Mommy Lil that'll be coming on to ensure, and the pain that they suffered in the generations before that, that we vote and participate in the political process. Hey, so there's a debt crisis looming, and I'm sure you've heard of the debt crisis looming. I had no idea that the United States is in debt $32 trillion, $32 trillion of money that's been printed. And essentially in our economy, the dollar that you see that's printed by the Treasury Department, which the Federal Reserve oversees, our debt in this country is supposed to be backed by what? Backed by gold. So during the course of the pandemic, when we needed to keep a economy straight, We just continue to put money into the economy. And so here we are with a looming debt and a political environment between the Republicans and Democrats who can't seem to figure it out. The Republicans say, hey, the only way that we'll pass a debt ceiling or raise the debt ceiling is if we cut certain departments. They want to look at Social Security and other social type programs that would harm a number of people and communities out there. But, you know, there is a point that there's something that has to be done with a $31 trillion debt, banks failing. And what happens to you if the debt ceiling isn't raised June 1st? Well, those of you on Social Security that receive Social Security checks, no more. The Social Security checks would not go out. Those of you that work for the federal government, you would not get paychecks. The military would not be funded, as well as many of the departments that support the people in this country and many of the countries that we rely on or rely on us for support over abroad. So hopefully President Biden and the leaders of the House and the Senate, they met earlier this week, can get together and figure out what's reasonable, what's a reasonable debt to raise so that those on Social Security, because can you imagine people living paycheck to paycheck and on June 1st, there's no check in the mail. What do they do? What do they do? Not a scenario that we want to face. Hey, did you hear about Tommy Tuberville? Tommy Tuberville, the U.S. Senator from Alabama, former head football coach of the University of Cincinnati and the University of Auburn, right? And these are two schools. And the reason we brought this up because Tommy Tuberville defined racism, a person that recruited blacks to play football, you know, for him at both of these schools, heavily relied on them, came out and he's holding off confirmation hearings on over 100 commanders in our U.S. services and stopping the Pentagon from ensuring that our leaders are given ranks because he believes that white supremacists should be part of our military and that we cannot or should not ban white supremacists from the military. And he says it. You know, how do you define a white supremacist? You know, we know that at the insurrection, it was at least 6 to 8% of those that were in military or police officers that actually participated in this. But Tommy Tuberville, remember that name, remember Beverly Cooper Wheely, who was part of our show last week, speaking of force multiplier, us ensuring that people like him, people like Donald Trump aren't reelected, and us supporting candidates that go against them in races around this country. Hey, so I speak of that because Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, the senior U.S. senator from Maryland, decided that he is not going to run for re-election in 2024. So what does this mean for us as a community? We know that there's only 100 senators each state, regardless of what size they are. Unlike the Electoral College, each state gets 2 U.S. senators, right? We have 2 black senators in America, Tim Scott, as I mentioned, and Raphael Warnock. Well, by Ben Cardin deciding not to run, to the forefront comes a young lady named Angela Alsobrooks in Maryland. She's been endorsed by just about every politician in the region, and she will be the first black, well, actually, she'll be a black female U.S. Senator. The last one we had was Vice President Harris from California. The first one, Carolyn Braun from Illinois. And we need that representation. So this is a race that it looks as though we are heavily, heavily favored as a people. So whether you're in California, Arizona, Florida, New York, the race in Maryland for U.S. Senate seat vacated, that will be vacated by Ben Cardin, Angela Alsobrooks, the black county executive of the largest voting bloc of blacks in Maryland, is running, has declared her candidates for U.S. Senate. So support however you can. It's important that we're well-rounded in the U.S. Senate and that we have that voice of another black in the U.S. Senate and also a female black. So, hey, that's the update of the news. Hey, by the way, sports. So it looks like the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Lakers in the West, and Philly just got creamed by the Boston Celtics. So it'll be the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics in the East playing towards the NBA championship for this year. So good luck to both teams. I think that championship starts on Tuesday in Boston. So the Boston Celtics and the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. Hey, so let's bring our two esteemed guests in the studio as we talk about and celebrate Mother's Day. And so with us, we have Mommy Inez, or I'll have to call her Mommy because I don't want her to call me out on the air, which she very likely will. Did I do any mispronunciations, Ma? How was my speaking today?
Your speaking was quite well.
Thank you so much. And that's my mother, Inez Haney Dotson, love her to death. And that's my beautiful aunt at the bottom, Aunt Lillian Thomas. Thank you all so much. We had you both on last year during the Women's History Month. And it's so good to have you both. It's so good to be blessed to have you both here a year later. So let me start off with Aunt Lil. So how's it been, Aunt Lil? How's it been the past year? How you doing? How you feeling?
I feel pretty good, Mike. I can't complain at this stage of life. I'm very happy, like you said. It's good to be here. And I'm so proud to be with my little sister, as am going to call her. And I know she won't like it, but I don't care. She is still my little sister. And I love her to pieces.
It may just be my TV, but I can't hear her.
Good.
I can't hear her.
She said that she said something about you being her little sister, and she knows that you don't want her to call her your little
That
sister.
doesn't bother me, but I couldn't hear her.
And we got Happy Mother's Day, ladies, and again, all of you out there with moms, shout your moms out, man. Let us put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. Shout your moms out. Let's see these moms' name. And Aunt Lil, you were talking about you're feeling good. It's good to be here, right? How old are you, Aunt Lil? Do you mind sharing with us?
I'm going on 93 years old.
93 years old. Are you still driving?
No, for God's sake, no. But I am still riding with my 94-year-old husband.
So your
And
husband's 94 and you're 93 and he's still driving.
yes, he is. And he does well with his driving. And I'm happy that he's still driving, but I don't know how much longer it will be. We don't know from one
All
day
we
to
can
the next.
do, there you go. All we can do is take it one day to the next. So mommy Haney Dotson, mommy. So how are you doing? How's it been? How's the year been for you? How you feeling?
I'm doing well. Has some ups and downs, but I'm doing well
Right.
in the scheme of things.
What'd you say in the scheme of
I said
things?
in the scheme of things, I'm doing well.
I hear you. I hear you. So how does a day like today feel, Mother's Day, and how long have you been acknowledged as a mom? You've seen a lot of Mother's Days, huh?
Yes, I've been a mother for many, many years,
Wow.
and I'm very pleased to be one. Very happy and very proud.
Grandkids, great grandkids.
Yes, they come first.
So which ones come
Come
first?
before the children.
The children?
The grandchildren and great grandchildren come before the children.
Oh my. Okay. So is that the way it goes in life that the children take a back seat to the children, the children take a back seat to the great grands and the grandchildren?
Yes.
Any reason, or that's just the way you handle it?
No, I've raised you and given you whatever knowledge I have, and the children are dear. Don't worry, Mike. I love you. And you and your siblings are uppermost in my heart. I just wanted to get you upset.
Hey, that's okay. Well, I'm still smiling. So, Aunt Lil, how about you, Aunt Lil? How is the day to you? You've been a mother for a long time as well, and I know you've had some tragedy in your life, and I, how you want to share that. That's fine. But I've always considered you like my mother, and I know my mother doesn't mind that. I considered Aunt Unella like my mother because that's how we were raised. We were raised in a kind of village, in terms of moms and uncles. We all were passed on. We were spanked by, disciplined. How does it feel a day like today? How's your grandkids and kids and great grandkids?
They're coming along well. I don't see them quite often, like I would like to, but I try to keep in touch with them. And they know that I love them. So that's about all I can do. And at this stage of life, I don't think they expect me to do anything more than I do. And that's pick
Hmm.
up the telephone and call them and tell them I love them and please come to see Granny. I talk
So
to them.
that's important. Is that important to
Yes,
you? This is one of your grandkids, right? Isn't this one of your grandkids? Is this the oldest or?
this is the young, what, well, this is not the oldest. Shannon Clinton is the oldest. This is
Hmm.
Rajay, and she's next. Uh, and there was a boy, and he is no longer here. He was in a tragic tragedy hit him at his 23rd birthday. So he's not here
Your
anymore.
grandson?
But yes, uh-huh.
Is that a point of reflection for you on a day like today? I mean, how does that grasp you? Is that something that you talk about or think about? I mean,
Oh yeah, you never forget about it, but you have to learn how to live with it
wow,
because uh, God doesn't mean for us to grieve over things that we can't do anything about.
wow. So you say that God does not mean for us to grieve over things that we cannot do anything about.
That's right.
So
And
spirits, uh-huh.
he has removed much grief from my heart, believe me,
Wow,
or I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you about it.
wow. And so on a Mother's Day like today, you talk about that grief, and does it, because I know my oldest cousin, your son, was also tragically killed, right?
Yes, he
And
was.
we shared the same birthday.
You sure did. And every time you have a birthday, I know he's around somewhere. And I feel happy to know that you and he were both born on the same day, but just 10 years apart.
Exactly 10 years apart.
Exactly 10 years apart. Yeah.
And so today is a day that gives you pause to reflect on that, right? As a
Oh,
mom, is that what you're saying?
oh yes. Yes. Yes.
I see a comment in there. I love you, Aunt Lo, from one of your kids, and one of your um, nieces or
Oh,
nephews. They love you.
that- that's
You see
Wesley.
that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I saw it, but
And
I
there's
didn't.
another one. Uh-huh.
Michelle's Delicious Delights. Mommy and Auntie Lil. Blessings to you, wonderful ladies, on this Mother's Day. Thank you,
Wow.
Michelle.
So the spiritual aspect, and this question is for Mommy Inez. You were raised to be in the church and have a belief. Is that accurate? That you were raised very spiritually and in a Christian environment?
Yes.
Who ensured that?
Well, my mother, whom I did not know, in a letter when she was dying, and I was about 7 months old, asked that we be raised in the Episcopal Church. And I have followed that. I read that letter. In fact, all of us went to an Episcopal church, all 7 of us.
Wow. So you didn't know your mother died when you were 7 months old? Did your big sisters and brother ever share with you any particularities about your mom that you recall or give pause to?
Yes, they talked about her.
Hmm. I think for most of us, I have friends that have lost their mom as well, and it's just something that I can't relate to. I just can't relate. That's why it's so good to have you and Aunt Lil on a show like this and share you with the world, because your experiences, at 93, and how old are you, Mommy Inez?
I'm 84. I'll be 85 in September.
84 and 93. Right. Wow. So that takes us back to the 30s and 40s of life. Was it much different back there? Was religion something that was important to hold on to? Because you said that your mother more so dictated in a letter that she wanted you all to participate and raise in a certain part of faith or into the Episcopal Church. Was religion important given the environment back then?
Well, to whom are you want either of us
Well,
to
yeah, either of you. I mean, I know it wasn't a great environment, a lot of racism and segregation back there during that time. Were churches segregated? I mean, how was the religious
Yes, it was
environment?
segregated, but what you don't know, we lived in Black communities and we received a lot of love. When we were young, we didn't know about segregation. We just knew that we lived in the community where we lived, and we went to church where we went. I didn't really, I experienced segregation once as a little girl that I knew of. And Lillian took me downtown and I wanted to go in a particular movie. And she said, "You can't go in that movie." And I never understood why I couldn't go in the movie. And then she told me after we got home. But we had everything. We had everything we needed.
Oh. How about you, Aunt Lil? How did you feel back then? You understood segregation because you told your little sister where she could not go. So you understood the separation back then of the races. How did that affect you?
Well, I can't say it didn't affect me because at some point in my life it did. I lived through a period when it was really hard to not be able to go downtown and go where you wanted to go, but we knew where we lived, like Inez said, and we went to school where we lived, and we went to the store where we lived, and I've heard something that I don't like that's going on in the city now. People are saying that we hate Jews. We don't hate Jews. Had it not been for Jews when we were growing up, many of us would not have had a decent place to live or a decent place to shop in. All the Jews had grocery stores. They welcomed you into their grocery stores, and we didn't have any problem with them. We even, some of them even played, the children even played together. But for saying that blacks hate Jews, that's a horrible thing for anybody to say, because we blacks did not come up with hate in our hearts for anybody, and not anybody. And I can say that with dignity, because my sister can also verify it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We just had a conversation last week and about that. I know during my time growing up that many of the store owners in the neighborhood were Jewish stores, and the Jewish people were a consummate example of how we could be community. The religion was the basis of it. They tried to show us how to strengthen our own culture as they strengthened their culture around their religion, around education. And we were talking last week how that is the model for our community and our culture to be better economically, educationally, is to look at the Jewish community. So I absolutely agree with you in that regard. But when you talk about spending, where you spent your money, um, Mami Inez talked about segregated communities. You went to schools that were black. You lived in black communities. Did you spend your money with blacks, or were it the Jewish store owners? How was the economy in the segregated neighborhoods? Where did you spend your money?
Let me add one thing. They had our little black boys and girls working in their stores. And I can say that because I know my brother, the one that I'm next to, but he's gone. He worked in the Jew stores and waited on the customers, and the Jews treated us very good. And like I said, if it hadn't been for some of them, we wouldn't have been able to live as good as we lived.
Wow. So, Mami Inez, what is your thoughts about that? How did segregation? You said you knew no better other than your big sister telling you where you could not go. Did it make you curious about where you could not go? How did you feel about not being able to go outside of a community of people that look just like you? How did you feel about that, Mami Inez?
As I said, uh, I must have been 4 or 5 years old. I just wanted to go to a movie. I didn't question her about why I couldn't go in that movie. And she told me to be quiet and she didn't want anybody to hear me. And I'm sure she felt shame in not being able to take me there.
Wow, that's interesting. You said so. You said you think she felt ashamed not being having to say to you, you can't go somewhere. Wow.
Because I probably carried on a little. I said, you have money and daddy gave us money, and why can't I go there? And I'm sure I can imagine how she felt not being able to take me there, and with other people hearing me saying that I wanted to go to that movie.
I don't even remember about it, honey.
I remember it.
I'm sure you did.
There was a movie on Lexington Street right off of Howard.
On Lexington off of Pine. I can't remember.
So how was it? How was it back then? Because I'm assuming that you two were relatively young mothers, right? So meaning that post high school, you were raising young kids. How was it then when you look at it today in terms of raising kids in an environment like that? And Ma, you want to start that off?
Well, I mean, integration took place in 1955 when I was in the 12th grade. So I could take you most places that I wanted to. And if I knew I wasn't wanted at a place, or if I felt the place was segregated, I wouldn't take you there. I mean, people now ask me which school, you know, some my white friends have asked me which school did I attend and which school did I graduate from. And I proudly say Frederick Douglass. And and they say, a couple of people have said, did you go to Western? And I just educate them and tell them I wasn't allowed to go to Western because it was segregated. It was only for white girls, and I couldn't go to Western. But we had just about everything we wanted in our own neighborhood, except the freedom and to go to another neighborhood and go someplace. Would you agree with that, Lil?
Yes, I do.
There was a question out there, and we're going to get to questions, and that's another thing. Please acknowledge your moms in the chat. Shout out your moms, their names. We'll call them out as we see them. If you have questions for these two distinguished ladies, please put them in there. But there was a question about how did music play a role in your childhood? How did music play a role?
Music played a great role in our childhood growing up. We had music all around us, and we were happy. We loved to dance and sing. And if you know of her living, she'd sing to you now, honey. She wouldn't, she, Inez?
Mhm.
So who were the big artists back then when you were coming up? When you were younger, what did you dance to and what did you sing to? Who were some of the artists when you were youth, and what kind of music was it?
It was good, clean music, and that's the only way I can explain it. And it had songs, some songs that we couldn't listen to, but
What did that song look like on the song? Was it
that,
like the rap music today and the house music and the
oh,
go-go?
it was more like a blues and uh,
Okay.
you know, and but it was fun. It really was, and we had nice places to go to where we could dance on Friday nights and didn't have to worry about anybody. I'm laughing at Michelle at Boogaloo. Didn't have to worry about anybody shooting out the door at you. You could walk home, and my father would always tell me, I don't know what he told Inez, but he told me, get in the house before it gets dark. Don't want to be out there in the street when it's dark. So he saw to that.
So Mommy Inez, what do you remember about music back then, and compare it to the rap music and some of the language, and particularly in the '90s that you heard, and some of the derogatory terminology towards women? Was that a culture shock for you when you heard rap music and some of the artists playing years later compared to what you saw or heard when you were growing up?
Well, I just want to go back to your original question just about music to begin with. We had all types of music in our home. We had Marian Anderson, Roland Hayes.
We
We
sure
had
did.
classical music. Uh, we didn't just have Bach music. We had all kinds of classical music.
Did you say bop music? What's
I
bop
said
music?
Bop music, or what?
Bop.
We had all types of music.
So Marian Anderson, she was an opera singer, right? Was
Yes.
she? Okay, so you all listened to that. So was it your parents that gave you this well-rounded musical menu, or you just gravitated to it? Did you learn it in school? I mean, how did you get to hear Marian Anderson and some of the other artists, classical artists? I mean, how'd you learn that? Was it school
It was
generated?
our,
It was
it
in our
was
household.
our big sister, Rachel Banner Carroll. who gravitated to the better things in life, and she wanted us to see the better things. And she, even though she went away from home and uh, got married, she came back to see about her little sisters and brother. Am I right, honey?
Mhm, mhm.
She always came back to see about us.
And also in school, we had plays. We heard classical music when I was going to school. They played
Oh, right.
things by Marian Anderson, and as I said, Roland Hayes. I can't think of all the names, but we were exposed to all kinds of music.
We
by
sure.
black artists in
Yes,
black
Marian
schools,
Anderson and Roland Hayes were both black.
and you went to Douglas High School because you couldn't go to Western, which was an all-white girls' high school. You went to Western, so you were influenced by black culture
Right.
in black schools in a black community. Do you think that that was an advantage to you?
It depends on how you use it. You could use it as an advantage.
Well, when you look at the fact they're talking about critical race theory and white school systems dictating or outlining what blacks can learn versus you going to a black school in a black district, the educators who were black dictated what you learned. Is this
Mhm.
what our young people are missing today? The ability to be influenced by black culture, knowing that a Marian Anderson was an opera singer and she was black. I wonder if they know about her today.
I would imagine they do. She was big enough for
It
everyone
isn't.
to know about.
It isn't taught like it was taught to us to know who our people were.
I was at a college in Maryland a couple of weeks ago dedicating something to Thurgood Marshall. And I'd say 80 to 90% of the young people, and that's one of the reasons why they had this dedication, was to teach them, did not know who Thurgood Marshall was. They did not know that. And so my question to you, were we better off, particularly Aunt Lil, as you described not being able to, my mother said you told her she could not go in that movie theater. My mother mentioned 1955, things became desegregated, but it seems as though you all thrived in the community you were raised. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Very true. We didn't miss out on a thing in the long run.
So why do you think there was a push from 1955 on to desegregate communities? It seems as though in many communities aren't doing very well. You mentioned that you could go out and not be shot at, etc. And so here we are 40, 50, 60 years later. You know, what have the gains been when you look at it to how you were raised to what's happening in communities that you see now? Are there any gains that you see? Either one of you can answer that question. Just jump on in.
I can't answer it because I would be not telling the truth if I said that I don't see anything that we've
Well, we
gained.
want you to tell the truth. Go
I,
for it.
I know. But anyway, I don't think things would have been better if we had kept our black schools and our black teachers who cared about us and taught us what we needed to learn.
So Arlo, let me ask you, did you feel as though it was not politically correct to say that? And that's why you didn't want to say it, that it's better for us, desegregation may not have been the
The best
best,
thing.
the best thing for us. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what I'm trying to say, Mike. Must not
How
have.
about you, Mommy Inez? What do you think about that? Do you think that we were better when we had teachers and schools that were in our communities that focused on our history was learning better then?
I think that all of us should have the opportunity to go to the school to which we wanted to go. You know, the Western, where both my girls went, and Northwestern, those schools should have been, every school should have been accessible to whoever wanted to go there, whoever lived near there. People who lived, you know, Black people who lived in the Falls Road area. Well, Western and Poly are relatively new to me. But people who lived wherever they lived should have been able to select where they wanted to go to school. Their parents should have been able to select where they wanted to go to school.
Wow. Well, you know, you make a good point, Mommy Inez, because it sounds as though when you talked about your dad and you talked about your big sister influencing what you listened to and culturally what you were pointed to, it sounds like you feel as though choice should have been to go wherever, but the family, the basis of family and being reared properly is what was most influential, you feel. Is that accurate, that you feel as though family has to be involved in education?
Maybe we would have chosen to go to Frederick Douglass, where I graduated from. But I should have had a choice if I wanted to go to Western, an all-girls school, or to, I should have been able to go to the school of my choice. Our schools didn't have all of the amenities that the white schools had. We should have had a choice of where we wanted to go to school, depending on where we lived, because I know some things we didn't have a choice about. We typically couldn't go, if we lived where we lived on Harlem Avenue, we couldn't go to, I was going to say, but that's another Black school. But I think taking in consideration the area in which you live, with schools near that may have been white that were closer to you, if you and your parents wanted you to go to that school, we should have been able to go.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Were the police officers in your communities Black as well?
Yes.
At one point, there weren't. They were all white. And they were very good policemen who came around and looked at us to see that we were all around.
They were on foot. They were on foot?
Yes, they were on foot. But as we got older, the forces became integrated. But it was a long time before they became integrated.
There was a question about Martin Luther King, and where were you all at when Martin Luther King was assassinated? Lil, do you remember where you were when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and what did you think and feel about that?
I feel sorrow for the world because he was such a good man. But as for what I was doing and where I was, I don't know where I was yesterday morning, so I sure can't remember I was when Martin Luther King died.
I hear you. I hear you.
That was not a joke.
I understand.
Honestly, truth.
How about you, Man? Now you were a police officer in Baltimore City, right?
Yes.
And
I was a policewoman. There were women and there were men. But they had not been integrated at that time, women and men. But I know where I was and what I was doing. I was in my bed asleep, and I got a call from a friend who said they finally got him. And I knew what they meant. And I hung up, and the next call I got was, we're sending someone out from Western Police Station to pick you up to come to work. So
So
that's
the,
where I was.
so the next call you got was to report for duty because they expected community issues, right? And there were riots in communities across
Yeah.
America, right? And to what Aunt Lil said earlier, many of the businesses during the course of the Martin Luther King riots, I believe that was 68, 69, communities were
Yeah.
destroyed, 68, right? Communities were destroyed by our own people, not to be built back up in some communities for decades. So, what did you see, Mami Inez, during the course of that? Did blacks have a right to be that upset to destroy their own community?
I don't. I don't think anyone should destroy their own community. But there was a lot of that. The anger just came out in that manner.
I just remembered something, and now I forgot. Uh, I do remember when Martin Luther King was killed. Wayne, my oldest son, was in the Air Force, and he was stationed. Uh, I can't remember where, but he was home on leave that day. He was in the, uh, did I say the Air Force?
Airport.
And he was home that day. And I was at work. And I worked at Westinghouse. And the ladies that I worked with were so kind to me, so very, very kind. And they saw to it that I got home safely. And that he was able to get back to the base safely because he had to go back. And that was really, really, it was hard. That was hard.
Wow.
So,
Wait, let me ask you a question compared to the 30s and 40s and 50s. What is the biggest wow? If you were to answer this question, I never believe I would see. What would that be when you compare, be it technology, education, science? What is it that you never thought back then that you would see today? Is it the wireless telephone or a telephone in the car? What's your biggest wow about where we are in the 21st century compared to when you were growing up that you're surprised and that maybe it's a comfort or benefit to you? Ma, what do you think that wow is when you look at things? Walking around with a
There's so
cell
many
phone?
things. I can't think of any one thing right now.
Walking around with a cell phone? I remember when you had a Prince's phone against your wall and you couldn't go any further than the
Right.
cord would take you. Is this cell phone? What
I wish
about
they
you,
would
Aunt
have
Lil?
stayed on the wall too.
You said you wish what?
I wish they would have stayed on the wall. I get sick of people walking around everywhere talking on telephones.
So you think
I
that's a
do
piece of
too.
technology that has
The
that has not done
television,
us well?
we didn't have televisions when I was young. Well, when any of us were young, we didn't have, when Lil and I were young, we didn't have televisions. They had not been,
You didn't have television?
there were no televisions.
Wow. And now you got 3,000 channels, huh?
Oh, we do?
Oh yeah, you probably
I still use, I still use 12 channels.
you still use 12. Aunt Lil, what about you? Because you worked at Westinghouse, right? So you were around a bit of technology. Any technology out here surprised you when you look at it and say, "Man, wow, I can't believe we're doing that."
No, I believe they're doing whatever they're doing because I've got a telephone home on the wall that I don't know how to operate. One sitting on the table that I don't know how to operate. And I think it's three phones plus the cell phones and we don't know how to operate any of them, neither my husband or I. So we just may as well not have uh, uh, half of those that we have. They're a
Wow.
heartache, truly a heartache.
Wow.
And I'd like
Hey,
to.
well, we're winding down. It's just been good just to talk with you all, and we should all take time to talk to our moms, dads, sisters, brothers. I'm listening to them talk about how their big sisters and their dad participate in education, point them in the right direction, culturally made sure they were well rounded. And so my final question, and Aunt Lil would love to you answer this first. When you look at where we are as a community, Black community, and you're our mother, you're the mother, what is it that you wish or you would say to us that we need to do different to be a better community? I'm not saying we're bad, but how could we be a better community in your eyes, and what would you do if you had the ability to influence that to make us a better community?
We would try to love one another, and that is in a good way. To treat people like you want to be treated. Be kind. Try to understand, and just be yourself. But try to help your neighbor if you can. And that's all I can say.
How about you, Mommy Inez? What are your
I
thoughts
agree
about
with
that?
my sister.
You agree with your sister?
Uh-huh. Look out for one another. Whether your neighbor be black, white, Chinese, Ghanaian, wherever they come from, I think we should look out for one another.
Hey, that's fantastic. Well, it's been great. Hey, one other question they want me to ask you. Do you think Joe Biden is too old to be president?
No,
Oh, Aunt Lil, why don't you answer that question?
I said no. I don't think he's too old to be president.
Well,
He's
listen, I
he's
got
not,
to agree with you.
he's not two steps older than that other one that wants to be back in the White House to tear it up and to run rampant and do more hatred and unkind, say unkind things about people.
Wow. Well, you are sharp as a tack, man. So I can imagine. And Joe Biden, I mean, what'd you say? You're 92, 93?
I'm going on 93. Don't get it mixed up.
Okay, I apologize sincerely. Hey, so you're going on 93. Then, as far as I'm concerned, Joe Biden's a baby. He's a kid, right? Compared to you, and you're sharp as a tack. So, hey, Joe Biden, according to Aunt Lil, is not too old to be president. What about you, Mommy Inez? What do you think?
I agree.
So, is this a sister thing where you're taking what your older
No,
sister says and
no, I agree. I don't think he's too old to be president.
She never did when we were young take what I said, so she's not going to take it now.
Oh, really? So she's not a good listener there, Aunt Lil?
She was always sharp.
Oh, wow. Well, hey, that's another show. Well, we're at the point now, and I really appreciate you both. I love you both so much. Like I said, I'm fortunate. I've got a mommy. I've got a mommy. I consider you both, and it's a wonderful thing. And as I said to the viewers earlier, adopt these two women, and they're women like this in our communities all over. We just have to listen and respect and understand their perspective of what they've seen. But thank you both for being on 60 Minutes in Black America. Hey, next week, and hey, before you go, is there anything that you want to say to the world? Anything at all? Let me give you the final remarks. Anything you want to say, Aunt Lil, to the people out there? Speak to the people. What do you want to tell the people?
it's been nice talking to you all, and I hope I didn't act too much like a jerk. But
Not at all. Not at
okay,
all.
all
How
right.
about you, Mommy Inez? Anything you want to say?
I'm very proud of you.
Oh, my. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you both so much. And, we're getting ready to sign off. Just want to talk a bit about next week. As you know, on this show, we try to give information that could be leveraged in all communities. So next week, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is something we're hearing more about, the dangers of it, the beauty of it. Whether you know it or not, you're using artificial intelligence anyway. And so we're going to be dedicating the next couple of shows for a better understanding of what artificial intelligence is and how we can leverage and use it on the offensive versus the defensive, because many of us don't understand it. So we've got an expert that we're negotiating, one of the best in the business of artificial intelligence next week. In addition, Jamie Miner will be coming back on next week to update us on the cryptocurrency market as well as the financial crisis in America. You're watching 60 Minutes in Black America. My name is Mike Haney. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Every day is Mother's Day as far as I'm concerned. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here at 6 p.m. next week.